So now we're going to talk about the actual ways that we can organize, or structures, if you will. This one's going to be a little bit longer, my apologies, but there's a lot of, I think, important material here. To me, organizing is really where capabilities happen, and so it really matters how we organize. It shouldn't be just a casual thing. I have also posted a reading, an excerpt from some work I have done that talks about routines and structures. Your call whether you want to read that first and then watch the video, or watch the video and then read that. I hope that you'll find that they are complementary. I'll try to use the same language, but focus on the ideas because, as with many things, there may be slightly different labels for essentially the same thing. We're going to start with some old approaches to organizing. I shouldn't say old, completely old, because many companies still use them, but old in the sense that they have been around for quite a while. We know quite a bit about them. You might call them traditional approaches. And these are mostly built for exploitation of existing competitive advantage, taking things that we do well and ensuring that we can continue to do well with them. In these traditional approaches, for the most part, focus is on the differentiation of tasks. That is an emphasis on the pieces, and information flow is primarily vertical or up and down. Perhaps the most well-known and most utilized of these traditional approaches to organizing is the functional organization, also known as a task structure because the initial structural units are based on the tasks that need to be done, usually functions, marketing, operations, accounting, human resources. So in a picture it looks something like this, and nothing magical about the particular boxes I have put in here. They're all functions. I have left out HR, I have left out finance. I'm not trying to diss on those. I just can only fit so many boxes on the screen. So, design, production, accounting, marketing, and distribution make up our tasks, our basic functional structure. Oh, advantages to this approach. Well, it's specialization, really, for the most part. The functional structure started when small organizations started getting bigger, and you couldn't have everybody doing everything. So we broke people up into the different tasks. So, big advantage is the specialization of skills, and with that task expertise, it also allows for capturing economies of scale because you're doing each task all together. On the downside, though, uh, there's limited communication and coordination across and between the various tasks. Um, that is, design doesn't necessarily talk to marketing, doesn't necessarily talk to production on a regular basis. They could, but it's not built into the structure. As a result, it can be a little slow if it has to respond and change. And really, the coordination happens through top management, and that's okay in a stable world with a limited set of products. But uh, if you've got a lot of different products, a lot of different needs for coordination, then you can end up overloading top management. So, if companies get too many different products, too many different things that they need to coordinate around, then they can make a change. And they can go to what's known as the divisional organization or the multi-divisional firm. The M form is another label you'll hear. And here we're going to departmentalize, we're going to make our first set of units outputs, that is, a whole. It might be products, customers, geographic regions, but the notion is that it is a whole we're working around rather than the tasks initially. Okay? Then within each of the wholes, then we have the functional areas, and those functional areas work only on the tasks related to the output or the division. So let's look at a picture of this. In this case, we could take our previous functional firm, say it was a clothing company, started out making perhaps only men's clothing, but then broke into women's clothing as well as accessories. And rather than having all of marketing work on all of the different lines, instead of having all of production work on all of the different lines, etc., they broke up into divisions based on the output. Women's clothing, men's clothing, accessories. And again, within each divisional unit, then you have the functional tasks, but the designers under women's clothing are only focusing on design for women's clothing. There's a whole different group of designers that focus only on men's clothing, etc. Now, in this case, the picture shows product divisions, but we could have very much the same kind of output if we were basing these on customers as our output. Different places the company sold to, in this case, major department stores, specialty shops, and private labels, if each of those customers required different sets of products and services. Could be on geographic divisions. If we find that we are making different kinds of clothes in the United States versus Europe versus Japan, we might want to make that our first cut. But in any of the cases, the same idea. The designers, the producers, the accountants, the marketers, underneath a division are focused only on the needs of that division. If you want to make it real complex, we can have multiple divisional levels, in this case geographic regions, within the product divisions underneath them. Same basic logic. Now, what do we get if we do this? Grouping by output, the multi-divisional structure. Well, now the task specialists get to focus only on the tasks necessary for the output. So we don't have to coordinate designers working on multiple different things, marketers working on multiple different things, etc., which can make it more responsive and adaptive to the output because they're focused only on the output, the product, the customers, the region, etc. And it also allows for what's known as profit center accountability because each division is essentially its own little company. And we can therefore measure its performance really on a profitability basis and compare profitability across different divisions. But like any structure, there's a downside. What you often end up running into is the poor sharing of skills and information across outputs. That is, if design within one division learns something that would be useful to designers in the other divisions, it is difficult for that information to get there because the information flows tend to go up and down. In traditional structures, it's got to go all the way to the top and all the way back down. That can be a problem. It's also a place where that profit center accountability can be a problem because if the divisions are competing with each other on profitability, they may have disincentives to sharing information. In addition to just the basic flow problem, there may be disincentives. Don't share with them because we're trying to outcompete them. Also means that then broadly coordinating organization-wide actions is difficult, and it raises costs because we've had to duplicate all of the tasks in each of the different divisions. Oh, there have been some efforts to combine tasks and outputs. The matrix organization is mentioned in the book, and a matrix has dual reporting relationships in which many of the managers will report to both a functional or task manager and an output or divisional manager. Your book has a pretty complex example. Let me show you a pretty basic one here. Let's take our clothing company again, and now you see that there are the tasks across the top that we saw in the functional structure, but there are the divisions down the side that we saw in the product division structure. And the idea here is that the head of women's clothing gets to coordinate across the tasks for things related to women's clothing. The men's clothing head gets to coordinate across the tasks for things related to men's clothing. Yet at the same time, all the designers also report to a head of design. The production people report to a head of production, which helps overcome those problems of information flows. So, would that be the best of both worlds? Well, there's certainly advantages to it. It's a dual focus when both output and tasks are important, but it's also got some advantages in the cross-functional sharing of information. The communication networks are helpful, and the coordination happens within the structure rather than having to go up to top management. However, on the downside, anytime you've got more than one boss, there can be real confusion. So that's a problem. What if one boss wants you to do something and another boss wants you to do something? And who are you going to disappoint, or who are you going to put above the other? Managers from the functional areas and output areas all want the best people. They're going to jockey for power. Conflict can occur because of the extensive communication. Sometimes it can actually lead to slower decision making. That is, too much democracy can lead to not enough action. So, we've got both good and bad, as we do with any of the traditional organization designs.